Hi again then guys, and so we are finally here, the next stage of the DLC rollout for Gran Turismo Sport, as predicted and as promised even a couple of months ago. I believe it was around 50 cars which they planned to add to the game over, at that time, the next couple of months. We had some DLC before, including some brand new cars like the F-150 Raptor. Now though, we're on to another 10 cars, and although none of these have been specifically confirmed or denied by Kaz himself, who was the one who released this image in a tweet, who also incidentally has announced that this is being released on GT Sport next week, which is kind of vague, but at the same time a week isn't that long to wait. And of course we'll have some online maintenance before it's released, so that will give you an even closer idea when the time comes. Some of these cars from the silhouettes are very obvious, others could be open to interpretation. I have a very strong guess for all 10. Some of them aren't even a guess, they're definite. So we're going to run through all 10 silhouettes and give you my predictions of what they all are. Some of them could be different, but I don't think so. I think I've got these pretty spot on, and the majority of these are pretty obvious, and the majority of the community could get them right as well. So first of all, we have, running from top left to right, top to bottom, car number 1, which is very obvious, a returning car from GT6, as I'm predicting all of these are going to be the Ferrari P4. One of the most expensive cars in the game, alongside a few others, with a price tag of 20 million credits, but I am very interested to see how much this one's going to cost, along with a couple of the others, when it comes back. Because unlike on GT6, where you can have up to 50 million credits, on GT Sport, you can only have up to 20 million credits at a time. So if they are 20 million, that would literally clear out your entire bank account to buy them. Now they might still do that, but based on the fact that some of the classics have changed, like the radical difference with the Cobra in price from about $500,000 to 2 million, who knows what could happen. We know it's not going to be more than 20, unless they also update the money limit with the DLC, but we'll have to see. Next up is another very obvious one, and in fact another one of the 20 million credit cars, one of my personal favourite cars in the game, the Jaguar XJ13. Stunning looking car, never actually raced unfortunately, but with a ton of potential. As I said, it is also another 20 million credit car. I wouldn't have a problem at all if these were still 20 million, but again, we'll have to wait and see. The third car is a very expensive one, but not quite as expensive. It's the Ford GT40, and in particular I'm predicting the Mark 1, not the Gulf liveried version. Now it could be, but it doesn't look like that to me. It doesn't look like it's got the blistered arches at the back end like the Gulf version has. So that's a pretty obvious one, and also a nice car to have back. It is nice to have Ford represented on the more exotic end of the spectrum. Next up, 2017 Ford GT, maybe Polyphony, here's hoping anyway. Next up we have another one which is fairly obvious, you could get it quite quickly, a distinctive design from the 70s, of course the Ferrari 512 Berlinetta Boxster, or BB, the Boxer 12 engine. Nice classic, not one of my personal favourites, but it is a pretty quick car and a fairly popular one. Be interesting to see how the pricing affects this one, because stuff like the F40 remain the same, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Next up, a very obvious shape, but you could argue the generation. It does though look like a first generation Viper, and of course a hardtop, which most likely makes it the GTS. Now it could be a first generation ACR, because that does also exist, and it looks very similar, but I don't think so. It's much more likely to be the GTS, especially given how that's been such a long-standing car in the franchise. And also, it's always been a very good one, so I'm personally looking forward to seeing what that one can do. Next up, another very obvious shape. It's a McLaren F1. Of course it is. It's one of the most distinctive silhouettes on the entire list, once again giving some great rivalry to other exotics in the game, in particular of course the Veyron, but we'll have to see what else it can go up against down the line. Also the F40, but in kind of an indirect way, really, same kind of era. Next up, we have the first of two cars which I'm not 100% positive on, but I would say I'm about, say, 80 to 90% sure. This initially reminded me of a Jaguar E-Type, but personally I'm going with the Toyota 2000 GT. That's what I believe this car is, and like a couple of others on this list, the next two in fact, This could be a very interesting turn of events for Toyota, because of course on both Forza and Gran Turismo they've been systematically removing their road cars from the game and only leaving motorsport models for the most part. So these returning cars, if indeed this is that car, which I think it is, that'll be interesting, because it could indicate that they are maybe coming back a little bit more. Next up we have a car which I initially thought was an Aston Martin Vanquish, because of not only the shape, but also the very distinctive silhouette of those hips on the side, which the Vanquish has. However, based on the shape of the front end, and also that it has a ducktail at the back, which a Vanquish doesn't have, I've come to the conclusion that this is another Toyota, in fact, the normal concept version of the FT1 concept. I may be wrong, this is the only one on the list really that I'm not 100% certain on. I said with the Toyota 2000 GT as well, but this one even more so could be vague, it could be something entirely new, but to me it looks a lot like it. The side intake, the front end intake, and also the ducktail, and also the shape of the window to some degree looks very much like an FT1 to me, but we'll have to wait and see. Next up, of course, we have a shape which is defined by the rear wing in its silhouette form, just like a Ferrari F40 would be, and this is the one. The point of the video, well not the point of the video, but the title of the video, the thumbnail, the return of a JDM icon, and also for the first time ever, a premium version of the Toyota Supra returning to Gran Turismo. So if we do get all three of those, and my predictions for all three are correct, having three new Toyotas on the game will be pretty interesting. A classic, a concept, and a JDM sports car. And then finally, of course, we have another dead giveaway shape. It's a Lamborghini Diablo. Of course it is most likely the Diablo GT, but we'll have to wait and see. It could be something like a 6-litre VT, but I think the the Diablo GT is a much more likely one, given that it was already on the game. I considered the Nomad, but it doesn't have the rear wing or just the shape in general to be that one, so I think it's more likely to be the GT. Unlikely to be the GT2 for the same reasons, the wing isn't really big enough. But overall, that is it for my 10 predictions. Some of them are dead certs, a couple of them are open to interpretation, and I'm sure people do have different interpretations. Is it an FT1? Is it a Vanquish? Is it a Toyota 2000 GT? Or is it an E-Type? Or perhaps something completely different? Personally though, I feel pretty adamant about these 10. I think that they are most likely to be those, and of course to find out about more DLC news, I'm going to break down all of these cars in individual reviews and do tuning probably for all of them down the line, be it circuit racing, drag racing, various other things. Then of course stick around on the channel, and also just for more news in general. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.